thanks for watching this newest episode. You already know the gang, so we're going to jump right into Brrrr strategy today, and then we're going to talk about Brrrr to bankruptcy, okay? So, in case you don't know what the Brrrr method is, it's buy, rent, refinance, repeat, okay? So basically you want to get as much, you want to put as little into the property and then get your money back, and basically you have a rental property with as little to no money down. So I will throw the topic over to Bruce and we will go from there.
All right, you missed rehab in there, so you're glad I'm here to keep you on the straight and narrow. So Brrrr strategies, when people are buying and holding properties, often a Brrrr strategy is sort of the next step, and it's you know, a situation where, yeah, you've bought a property, you've rehabbed it, you've rented it, now you need to refinance, and that's normally where I come in, and typically you're refinancing to 80% loan to value, and then you take the proceeds from the refinance and you're out and buying the next property. So that's sort of the premise of the Brrrr strategy. So a lot of investors, you know, like that, and it's well promoted. I think from my standpoint, where I get concerned is, again, on the cash flow. I'll give you an example. I have one client that has 12 properties, and right now they lose $100,000, the difference between their rents and their mortgages, and that's before they pay property taxes, repair and maintenance, etc. So their Brrrr strategy is not, I'm going to Brrrr to buy the next property. Their strategy is, I'm Brrrring just to make payments on my existing debt. So that's a game that you can't win. So you have to be careful on a Brrrr strategy that your properties remain cash flow. Because like Mark said, if they're not cash flow and you're losing money on every property, your portfolio is losing money, we call that the Brrrr to bankruptcy strategies.
So I'm going to just throw something in there. My favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I learned a lot from that. I've read it at least 10 times. I remember one of the things they said was, if you're losing money on a home, how many can you afford to own? And obviously there's going to be a certain number. But if you're cash flowing on homes, then how many can you afford to own? And really the number's infinity, right? I mean, if you're making money, the more you have, the better your portfolio is. But you really want, because you know what, again, a lot of these investors, these so-called gurus, will tell you, well, just keep Brrrring, Brrrr, 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 and all of a sudden you're losing $500 per door. How in the world does that make any sense as an investor? Again, that goes back to one of our videos we talked about where it's speculative, because sure, you can say right now the market's doing great and I'm probably going to make 10%, but it will stop. Don't get it confused. It will stop. When we see an average appreciation over 50 years of 2.5 to 3%, and you see the last couple of years have been 10 to 20%, you go with history. You don't go with the high numbers, right? You want to be conservative in your investment approach, because it will come back to bite you in the ass if you just think. I was watching a video on Donald Trump yesterday, and I mean, basically he was buying anything he could, and that's why he ended up going bankrupt, because he wasn't actually paying attention to the numbers, and there was a certain point where he literally couldn't even afford the interest payments because he owed so much money.
Yeah, I think the other thing I see investors, the mistake they make is they overvalue their properties, or they think they're worth more just because they own them. So, and classic example, someone comes into my office and they use round numbers again. They've just bought a $200,000 property. Now they want to Brrrr it, and they say it's worth $250,000. And I say, well, how long have you owned it for? A week. Okay, so have you put money into this property? No. Well, then why do you think it's worth $250,000? Well, basically I got it as on a deal, so it's worth that much. Or the formula I'm using, the software I'm using tells me it's worth that based on cap rates, etc. And I'm thinking that's not the way it works. So appraisals are based on what properties are worth, and they're going to look at comps. And if you pay $200,000 for it, it's still only worth $200,000. I'm sorry, the fact that you own it isn't that important from an appraiser standpoint. So they're going to look at comps, and they're not going to concern themselves so much with cap rates. So if the property next door is worth $200,000, yours is $200,000. They're identical homes. Yeah, your house isn't worth $250,000. You're not going to be able to Brrrr it and refinance at $250,000 unless you put some money into the properties.
I think we go to a lot of these seminars and we hear of the Brrrr, and speaking from experience, we have to take into consideration the insurance cost that you're actually carrying, plus the taxes on the property as well. And sometimes we seldom forget to factor those in. But also, when going into a BRRRR, from my experience, is I have a contact with an appraiser to pay the $100 to $300 to get an idea in terms of an appraisal of what it is today before buying, and then what it's going to be from what I'm going to actually put in terms of the finishes, and then looking at your comps and comparative values of the homes in the area. So I think it's key to make sure you actually factor that and strategize that into your BRRRR concept before going into it, and making sure you have your ducks in a row.
Yeah. Well, I know you have to be very careful on how much you invest in a property, because people will over invest a property, and again, I'll have people, for example, they'll put $40,000 into a kitchen, and then they're mad because on the appraisal it's only worth $20,000. Well, yeah, the appraiser really doesn't care that you have granite countertops. Appraisers are looking at how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's the square footage, what's the size of the lot, is there a garage, etc. Countertops are not so important from an appraisal standpoint. So sometimes I explain to clients to say the appraised value is different than the market value. Perhaps someone buying that property sees value in the granite countertop, they'll pay more, a premium for that property, but an appraiser, doesn't matter. Or a steel roof is another example. Well, I've just put a steel roof on my house, it's worth another $20,000. No, it's not. Your house is supposed to have a roof. So, the appraiser doesn't care whether it's a steel roof or it's an asphalt roof, it's got to have a roof. So, yeah, you got to be careful on the type of improvements you're making your property as well.
And on that note, I will say, and I think Raheem and I would know this a little more than Bruce, no matter what, every homeowner thinks their home is the Taj Mahal. It doesn't matter what the next door neighbor sold for. They'll say, well, you know what? They didn't have this or this or this. So my house, if they sold for 200, my house is clearly worth 300 because I have a shinier tap. It literally can be things like that. So you have to take those romantic goggles off and just look at your house from an intelligence standpoint versus saying, well, it's mine, so clearly it's better. So go ahead, sorry.
To get ahead in terms of the renovation, what I've learned is that make sure you go out to at least 3 contractors, get the quotes, and if you have actually contacts that you can work with on a repeat basis and build that relationship, that's where you're going to save money and get ahead in the long run, and that's where you're going to profit from my experience.
And on that note, we'll end it here. Always make sure you to reach out to professionals, okay? I mean, you're looking at 3 professionals at this table. Reach out to somebody, because if you are doing buy and hold with what Bruce said, you don't need to put top-of-the-line hardwood to make your house look nice. You don't need to put the nicest granite. You're not going to put a 24-karat gold toilet in a place, right? Do the minimum to minimize to maximize, right? You want to put in as little as you can to make it look great and maximize your return.
Yeah, well, I just used from a personal example, we had put a sunroom addition on our house, and I was getting quotes, $40,000 to $100,000, and I'm looking at the people quoting me $100,000 for a sunroom, and I'm saying, not in this neighborhood. It just wouldn't make any sense. It's not going to add value to my house. So again, we're looking, so we ended up putting the $40,000 sunroom in, and we're, looks nice. We're quite happy with it. So again, depending on the neighborhood you're living in, perhaps you can justify, higher end. But again, to me, it all depends on the neighborhood you're in.
Come see Mark, Bruce, or myself, and let's talk about BRRRR.
We'll see you on the next one.